Hi there again, YouTube, and today's my last part of my summer swap work with me outfit. Here's a pic of the illustration I designed for the concept for the outfit, for the character for my swap partner. Her name is Clover. So the swap requirements was an outfit and a swimsuit. So the parts I have: 2 sleeves, 2 sleeve cuffs, 2 collar pieces, 5 pieces for the torso lining, 5 pieces of fabric, 1 skirt lining and 1 skirt fabric. So my first step is to pin the back pieces of the fabric together and sew them and paste the seams. Then I pin and sew the top of the back to the bottom of the back and paste the seams. After that, I add the front pieces to the back piece, add the shoulders, naturally pinning good side to good side, since the fabric is printed on one side. And I fold over the seam allowance and pin in place and top stitch over that to make it nice and neat. Then I add the sleeves, that's the shoulders. I'm going for a poofy sleeve, so my sleeve is a lot wider than my shoulder. So during pinning, I gather all of the edges to form a nice ruffle so that I can have my poofy sleeve. When I'm doing pinning the poofy sleeves and things like that, I usually start pinning them at the edge, both edges, then at the center between the 2 pins, and repeat until I've got the gather I want. Pinning more would mean more fine gathers, and pinning less would make a few bigger, bulkier gathers. So after pinning both sleeves to the shoulders of the bodice, I sew them. Next, I pin the bottom backs of the lining together and sew them. And after sewing them, I paste them with my iron, and I sew the top of the back to the bottom of the back together and paste the seams as well. Then, like previously, I put the front pieces to the back piece at the shoulders. Next up, I'm going to be putting together the collar. I pin it together and I'm going to sew up at the scalloped edge of the collar. the straight curved edge is going to be sewn into between the lining and the main fabric later. Just remember that it's pretty fine work to work with round edges on the machine, so it might be better to hand sew it, but my hand sewing super ugly. Here I'm just making a couple of cuts on all the curves of the collar, so that when I flip it inside out, it's going to be a lot easier and neater. And while flipping it inside out, I'm pinning everything nicely in place so that I can press the seams again, so that the collar is going to lay nice and flat and neat. Usually when I use pins to press a seam flat, or keep it flat temporarily so I can press with the iron, I generally press it once with the pins in to get the position, and then I press it again to remove all of the indents caused by the pins. So after that, I pin the collar to the main fabric. Since the collar is two pieces of the same kind of fabric on both sides, it doesn't particularly matter which side goes where, but as long as everything is centered nicely, it's going to be fine. And then I sew. Next, I'm pinning up and rather folding over the edge of the skirts and pinning them up to make the hem neat. As much as I like circle skirts, pinning a curved hem is definitely annoying. But if you do it well, it looks quite cute. But I can definitely say I love the fluffy, big poofy skirts that come about when you use circle skirts. And I do the same with the skirt lining. Just know that the skirt with the blue patterned fabric and the green skirt lining aren't going to go together like traditional lining. It's more like two different layers. I'm mainly calling it a lining because it's just more convenient to understand it that way. Especially since it's the same color as the actual lining for the bodice. So then I sew those two. And now I'm making a bunch of box pleats with a ribbon to add to my skirt. It's quite a tedious process, and a lot of times when I do it I run out of pins, but it looks very nice in the end. To form each side of a box pleat, you basically make a zigzag or a Z pattern with your fabric, and then the opposite way to the opposite side to make a box pleat. Someday I'll do a proper video to show you what I mean about that, but I'm sure before then you can find tutorials or what have you with more accurate descriptions. So while I'm doing that, I constantly measure the amount of my box pleated ribbon to the skirt so that I know I have enough. Generally I add a bit more than what I would normally use because, well, sometimes something goes skew, especially with the circle skirts, and you need more or maybe even need less of what you thought you needed. During the process, I was quite annoyed with my roll of the ribbon because it kept twisting and turning, and I had to constantly keep twisting and turning the roll itself so that I don't, rather to make it more convenient for me to work with the ribbon, because it kind of gets in the way when it's twisted. And it seems I ran out of pins. And now my second box of pins. Sometimes, well, it doesn't happen often that I have to bring out my second box of pins. I don't always like to use them because they're pretty much new and still sharp and easy to use. I'm the type who wants to use old stuff until it's practically broken before I start using new stuff, which might not be the best, but that's how I do things. After I have enough of the ribbon, I cut it and I first sew along the edge of the ribbon to keep everything in place, and then I also pin it to the skirt. If you're confident enough, you can probably add it to the skirt in the first step. That doesn't always work out that well. and then I sew it. Next I add the sleeve cuffs to the sleeves. Once again I'm going for a poofy sleeve, so I'm going to be doing a lot of gathering. I fold my sleeve cuff in half, and then, like I said before, I pin the sides of the sleeve to the sleeve cuff, then the center between 2 pins and the other 2 pins, and so on and so forth. You can also see I've already pinned the other cuff. So I'll only be showing you one. And after pinning them, naturally I sew them. Just be careful not to sew over the pins and cause your needle to break or the pin to bend. So after that I sew up the sides, starting from the sleeves and then the sides of the bodice. And for the lining I'm going to do the same, but naturally, since there's no sleeves on the lining, it's just a bodice piece. Next I turn my fabric or my main bodice inside out, and checking it on my dress form and outfit, and then I'm going to pin the top edges around the collar of the lining to the bodice. Only the edges around the collar. And make sure to avoid the sleeves so I don't actually accidentally sew them up somehow. It's also, if you're not used to it, better to pin the sleeves out of the way. So after sewing that, I turn it inside out and I pin naturally, well, not naturally, I pin the lining and the collar to make a neat edge, and I'm going to press with my iron. I temporarily pin my skirt into place to make sure where the measurements for the edges is going to be, because I'm going to fold over the sides where it's open to make a neat edge. I pin the edges in place before removing the pins connecting the skirt to the bodice. And then I take the lining skirt piece and compare and measure it to the skirt piece and make a rolled hem, which is folding up the skirt piece, folding up the edge twice. I want it to be a bit more obvious, so I'm rolling it upwards for a kind of a decoration instead of the usual way of rolling it away and hiding it in the inside of the skirt. And then I sew up the edges and pin the two together along with the bodice, starting from one edge and going to the other. So while we're finishing up with the dress, after pinning we'll be sewing that and then the jacket will be done. So the character this was made for was for a character named Clover, and she's a tomboy who loves being active but also loves lacy pretty dresses. So to finish off the outfit, I wanted to put a ribbon around the waist. It took me a while to decide which color, but I think red works best. And I use some fabric glue to seal the edges after I cut them. And I tied it into a big bow to finish off the outfit. Apparently I can't do that upside down. And here's some pictures, everything together. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed watching these few videos. Thanks for watching and staying with me. Bye!